I'm reading from excerpts from parts of the piece that I submitted, which is excerpts from Selma. Selma is a larger novel one. God comes about and leaves and walks around and scatters disbelief and scatters passion, and he's a lot like Leonard. But Dakota told Selma that God made women with their legs spread apart because that's how a woman liked to be taken. Dakota is part of God's disciples, but Dakota says he won't let his younger cousin be. Dakota says he doesn't deal, but that he'll someday have enough money to produce his demo tape. He says that day he'll arrive and young ladies will spread out their legs and the 40,000 people in the Bible will all come back. That day, God will tell him he's a prophet. That's why Smooth sings. There are demons all around us. Dakota leans into Selma and whispers this without adjusting his volume. He's 250 pounds, maybe plus, and he's 6'4", so he says, and Dickie calls him Chewbacca. Playa hated, Dakota mumbles in revolt. He tells Selma that Dickie was in jail for rape. He is evil, the incarnation, and he needs to be in here, not just inside. If Selma can work at the council, take notes and talk meds, and even hug a consumer, why does Dickie and Nurse Kendra and that woman in ceramics and the staff up in accounting choose to be here each and every day? Dickie is serving his sentence right now. He gives self-help lectures to the consumers and talks about treatment as if it were a triangle. You're all just slicing off the bottom edge. He listens to Selma, and Selma listens instead to what Dakota says when he speaks about religion and the council. Dakota's qualification is uncanny. This space is a school, he says. Marco made Selma realize this for the first. He stares at a sheet of the commandments taped to the common area wall. He tells Selma he don't know too much, just interested in learning. This is what he says. I tell my mama, no ma, it's me, ma, but she doesn't hear. I know she doesn't hear. You don't, ma, why are you throwing that milk jug at me? She throws a milk jug right at, it hits me, my face, she throws the milk, and it splatters, and then my brother, I have a little brother, and he is walking. We're only smoking leaves, you know, we're only little, and we were playing pretend. You roll up tea in tea bags, you can smoke tea, and smoke in tea bags, in leaves. We wanted to be like old guys, men. My mom's in a wheelchair, and I bang on the door, and she isn't there, and no one is home, and I'm locked out, and I have to get to my brother, and my mom keeps yelling at me. You're not my son, get, you don't belong, and throwing stuff at me. When I walk in, she was thinking I was someone else, that's all. She kept hitting me, and I told her, but Ma, it's just me. And there the milk jug hit me in the head, do you see? See it, my head? And she kept banging, and I couldn't. Now, is this any way for a kid to grow up? Waiting, I was waiting for my brother, you see, waiting so that I could get in, and I could leave with my mother, and we could go, and we could leave. His monologue begins when Leonard peers over his shoulder and standing up. It's like he is exiting, but needs a last word. This is Leonard's first explanation for his head. This is when his head got hurt first. At the party, Leonard faces Selma and speaking. His words are slow and lucid. Now, is this any way for a kid to grow up? As if they're the only part he truly can't understand. That day, Selma feels she's finally met Leonard. And that same day, at the same party for Nurse Kendra, who was graduating and leaving the council, nothing is different at school, except for the cake. I like writing. I like the way it makes me feel good, and I think it can help me. I mean, I think that if I do some more of it, it can help me work on my applications for school. 3 visits later, after they've developed a routine, one with a unique question to pose, Cassandra also said, no, she only had that one day, not since the workshop 5 months ago when someone came in to help teach us writing. How much longer can Selma ask, have you written lately? And receive a response. Both weak women frequently fall into exhaustion, and that's something that fueled another question that died. Tell me about school. I mean, because you know, I'm a student, and I think school is really great. I want to go to school so that I can learn typing and other things, the necessary skills. I want to someday be a secretary at a place like this. I think that that would be a satisfying vocation and that I'm getting there. I'm not there yet though. It takes time to feel good, you know. but I already have my papers. I just need to finish the application papers, which takes time, you know, but I think I will manage if I keep working hard and getting well. Cassandra's words stutter like their sound in print. Each phrase takes effort. I never liked filling out applications. They make you go through the worst part before you even begin school. Selma felt talking with Cassandra was taking a break. She hoped Dakota wouldn't find her. Selma was careful to sit with her back to the door and careful to slouch as if reducing her area reduces the chances of her standing out. At the same time, Selma talks less. She thinks more about Cassandra's determination and how Dickie Kelly's triangle might prick it somehow. Sometimes Cassandra is sitting there in her chair by the window, looking like a passenger that just made it aboard with too much carry-on luggage, out of breath. She is seemingly always internally struggling with compiling and filling in the blanks of a form. On the other days, most of them, Cassandra's just not there.
I wanted to thank Starcherone Books for organizing the reading and for publishing 30 verse 30. I'm going to read a shortened version of the new thing I'm working on. It's called Paulina and Fran. Paulina was frumpy and brilliant. She had chosen Julian for her lover, and he was no longer satisfactory. He had bright, shiny hair. He leaned on things. He knew everything. Paulina had picked him out in the college library, mainly for his height, surprised when he had brains, a voice, a way of slouching through the world that showed disappointment in the world. Paulina found herself the center of a social circle in which nearly everyone was good-looking. She took secret lovers, and then many lovers. Julian was proud of his heartbreak. He slumped around the cafeteria. He made dim, infuriating films. Paulina felt healthier with each lover she took. She lay in their beds criticizing the layouts of their rooms, looking grimly at each poster, thinking, "Is this all you found to find?" Julian found Fran, a new friend of Paulina's. Paulina and Fran often met at the library, a dignified graveyard for ideas. Fran was obvious. She beamed when she said something worthwhile. She pouted about the meaningless of everything, piling her hair on top of her head, making her bedsheet into a toga. All the girls in this circle knew how to dance. They made jokes. They dolled up, though there were barely any boys, and the boys were fey, or cold, or so sought after that they seemed cliché or used. This was all in a cold, cold town. People moved to the town and their families forgot about them. Snowflakes died on their faces. They endured the human struggle. Upon receiving Julian's affection, Fran battled with her identity. Each orgasm was a personality conflict. Instead of going to the school library, she found an old little library where no one ever went and stationed herself there, an eccentric, a drifter, a lover/dreamer. That Fran could find happiness with Julian was excruciating to Paulina. She saw them kissing on someone's doorstep and angrily snapped a pencil in half. Alone at the library, Paulina stretched her legs. She called her mom. She smashed an ant with her sandal. She applied makeup with a small foam cube. She thought, "Fuck me, Julian," and quietly orgasmed in the library bathroom stall. Fran laid on Julian's ghostly chest, asking him about Paulina. Julian said, "She was always thrashing about like there was a great passion within her, but somehow I doubted the passion." Fran wanted to ask if there was a great passion in her, but it was a damning question. First, she would create a great passion. She was mostly there. In bed with Julian, all her concerns flattened into a cracker. At a party, Fran could hear Paulina's theatrics from every room. "The stars in our sky are far, far inferior to the stars of our ancestors," Paulina said. Marvin, the total mystery, arrived, and Paulina's group grew excited. Marvin had long, wavy hair. No one had ever been in a class with him. Fran shakily walked over. "This party is boring," Fran said. "Everyone is just making up theories." "I'm no fan of theories," said Marvin. Later, surrounded by people ecstatically dancing to Prince, Fran made out with Marvin. Fran skipped home after the party. She felt an insane feminine power. She imagined herself trying on outfits and her body making the outfits better. Julian entered his door wrapped in his quilt. Paulina's eyes flashed life as she told him about Fran and Marvin. Julian was miserable but invited Paulina inside. Paulina felt dazzling. She couldn't decide if she should seduce Julian then and there, or if she should save it for when he looked less pathetic. With heavy hands, he searched his computer for an acceptable music. When Fran presented herself to Julian, he spurned her. He said that his feelings had changed. If he wished to touch Fran, it was only to squeeze her arm, to feel the pleasing elasticity of her skin. Fran fumed. She wanted things as they were before. She missed Julian's love. She craved the zenness of being rammed. Paulina rejoiced when she saw Fran enter the library crying. It was an old, decrepit library, too, where homeless people pretended to read and perverts sniffed books. At a frat party, Paulina and Fran danced off to win Julian. Paulina's breasts shook violently at Fran. Fran danced desperately low to the ground, as was supposed to be attractive. Overwhelmed, Julian left. Paulina and Fran stopped dancing and stood hunched, breathing hard. They had barely recovered when Marvin walked in. Paulina immediately resumed dancing. Fran reluctantly danced. At the end of the semester, they all graduated in faux silk, then, like trash in the water, floated off to lousy jobs in obscure, heartless towns. Terrible things happened in the news. People killed one another in inventive ways, and Paulina read about it on Yahoo, guiltily, as if her interest promoted it. Years went by. Paulina was proudly not in touch with any of her college friends. She still had pizzazz, but the pizzazz had withered. It lay dormant inside her, slipping out in quick, cutting remarks. One day, Paulina went to the movies, and the movie starred an actress that looked like Fran, but heavier and less attractive. Paulina grinned as the heavy version of Fran struggled to chase down her killer, then grew faint and collapsed under a tree. Paulina left the movie recharged. A small blast of nostalgia lit up her face. She imagined Fran in the dim place, struggling under the weight of a heap of books. "Libraries," Paulina cried. "What a trap for youth." One did not become realistic in libraries. One filled their head with mold and ideas and left their sexuality in a coil near the stacks, where it turned to nothing and joined the dust on the floor, swept by losers. Paulina allowed herself to remember her college years, though as a general rule, she found memory corny. She went on the internet and easily found Julian's number. Julian's voice was epic in her phone, as if coming in from the afterlife. He told her of a terrible vacation he'd gone on alone to a random place he'd pointed to on a map, and how the locals had sensed this. Paulina remembered how she'd taken his virginity in a bold and showy way she was sure he had not forgotten. Julian was relieved to be reconnected. After hanging up, he immediately felt the need to call Fran. Julian's voice stayed with Paulina while she drove the 6 hours to him. When she got him and they were alone and unclothed, his attention felt double to Paulina because it was worth so much to Fran. When Paulina thought of Fran, only certain traits survived the obscurity. Paulina could remember her legs and her laugh, the way she plucked out her hair while distracted, but only through having sex with Julian. Thank you. Next is Michael Stewart.
First, I've been working on these pieces which require interaction in some way, shape, or form. And the first I'm going to read are some of these answers. So there's a website, you submit a question, and I give you an unhelpful response that usually has nothing to do with your question. And I'm collecting them, and they should be in book next year, but we'll see. I'm going very slow. And the questions are rather odd, so you'll see. How do I remove a mustard stain? It seems odd that there's no method of divination based on the accidental stains. The shape, color, location could be read, like tea leaves or the shape of birds in the sky. Yellow is a sickness, not to confuse it with other possibilities. In the shape of a top hat, a gentleman that you just met. To know is to reorganize into meaning. On your shirt, front, near the heart, why not this accident folded into something more? Like you read the blemishes on a lover. Scars are just the stitching exposed. A smear of dirt in the shape of a well. I got a couple of questions which I didn't know what to do with. What would you do if you were impossible? Every time a child went to a mirror at night and whispered my name, I'd reply. Or I'd curl inside a girl's mouth and pip her when she cussed. The devil and I playing backgammon, bottle caps for checkers and old teeth for dice. We'd sip Prosecco and lie to one another. Or I'd settle to the bottom of the sea, watch giant squids twist around leviathans while the stars dropped one by one from the sky. Again, I have no idea who submits these, so any type of intimacy that I indicate with these is entirely false. Why am I so lonely? I don't know. You're lovely. In your grandmother's cardigan, you're absolutely angular. You've got a sharp nose, an easy smile. The distance between us, I'm sure, cannot be worked out in a ruler, even a large one. Your dresses were always a little short, and the hem would hint up, perched on a bar stool, tonic and bitters of rum and ginger. So would your smile. What is the best accent? Indian British with that sleepy slur of morning, with glasses and an interest in a disheveled night. How do you find someone's Achilles heel? Watch them toy with the food on their plate. Remember that orbits are long. When the heart is sick, we say there's too much water in the blood. Here's a fortune cookie. The world can fit beside your eye. There is an old Romanian curse that can be translated, may you cut your apple with a dull knife. Put honey in your mouth before asking for something. Alexander was said to have had his wounds stitched with the long hairs of his horse's mane. As a boy, I slept with my mouth open until one morning I woke up with a moth, light and dusty, resting on my tongue. A cunt, he told me, as thin as a cat's pupil. Nobody will love you. No, nobody will love you. And then another piece that I'm working on that also involves some sort of interaction is this personality test. As you answer questions which are banal, especially at the beginning, they complicate the subsequent questions and also the possible answers that you give, so that it starts to create a story with your responses. So an easy example would be, do you have green eyes? And you would say yes, and then later characters would have green eyes or not have green eyes, and that would have some subsequent meaning. Since I can't obviously read you the questions, everything, I thought I'd read one of the later questions, which is about a paragraph long. I didn't go back, but I don't think that's any surprise to you. Instead, I holed myself up in a motel with a girl I met on Craigslist. She read me passages from an ISN in French. I'm trying to learn the language. And afterwards, we'd walk across the street to Denny's. We don't talk while we eat. We both have coffee late until the night. The sex is frantic, quick, and unsatisfying. One night, while she was watching something on TV, splendidly naked and on top of the covers, I ran a bath. I used a sock to clog the overflow and let it fill all the way to the brim. When I eased myself in, the water was so hot it stung. It spilled into the tile and soaked the bath mat. Water pooled around the door. I was holding a styrofoam cup of coffee, which I gradually let dip into the water, and then I plunged my head down and I screamed. And when I screamed so hard that I swallowed a lungful before I could get back up. I coughed for a while, and it felt like I was falling backwards into something. And when I wake, I see her, and she asks, "Do you know why pennies taste like blood?" She continues, "It's a deal I made with the devil. He's easy to meet. You wear wet socks, and you look through a keyhole. Then all you have to do is call his name 3 times. When you blink, he'll be right there." "What does he look like?" I ask. "Well, sometimes he's just an eye pressed against the hole, and other times? Other times he's a tiny man, very well dressed. Once he was a small girl playing a Game Boy. He wouldn't even look up at me while answering my questions." "Why did you want to meet the devil?" "Well, the same reason you responded to my ad and met me here." "What sort of deal did you make?" "I can't talk about the particulars, but pennies, they taste like blood because of what I did." So that night I ran cold water over my socks, and I bent over the bathroom keyhole and I said, "Jacob, Jacob, Jacob." And I see that same girl again. You meet a girl earlier on, the person I tested. She's wearing a summer dress. She says, "I've talked to him." I wait. "He says he'll do it. If you can get a girl to blush in a church." "I have till tomorrow." "It's got to be a good blush," she tells me. It's got to spread through her chest. She's got to turn the color of a flower in bloom, you know? So that's the last questions. And this last piece just recently came out in, it was American Letters and Commentary. It's called They. It's about, you probably need to know this because it's going to jump around a bit. There's a camp, and there's a big lake at this camp, and inside the lake there are these little tiny mermaids about the size of your thumb, and the kids eat them. They're very salty. It's not a good thing. There's a jar of pomade on the table, and all the boys are wearing their camp shirts. And nervously, my hand dips into the jar again, smooths and perfects my hair, and I pause, trying to untangle what I want to say and what I say. And I say, I know you go out onto the lake with your green nylon nets, but what I want to say is, do you know they used to sell them in tins like sardines? About the same size at least, their hair come back. But what I say is, it's the bones resisting them breaking against your still sharp teeth. Or I say, it's against camp rules. It's strictly forbidden, and nervously, my hand back into the pomade, thick cream on my fingertips. I look thin in these camp shorts, and what I want to say is, how can you eat a thing that can talk? But what I say is, their hair gets caught in your nets, the scales of their fish-like tails get caught between your teeth. One boy throws a conspiratorial glance at another. It's a trick, you see. You think you're eating them. I tell you they're porous, they're drowning you. Or I say, it's insidious. Would you floss with your grandmother's hair? And what they want to say is, don't you see the knots of them boiling under the surface of the water? Yes, I would say yes. But instead they say, the boats tilt dangerously if you move too quickly. And yes, this is true. And yet what they mean is, 1,000 little mouths, 1,000,000 little teeth. This is a way to die. And what I want to say is, you shouldn't be allowed on that lake. And what I really say is, if you tie a bottle cap or twist foil in your nets, they'll be attracted to the gleam. And as soon as I say it, I regret it. I watch their mouths break into smiles, the first sign of drowning. Part 2. Their hair's still wet from their morning showers, mosquito bites in their arms confused with first pimples, shoelaces poorly tied. They're thinking of girls in skirts riding bicycles, their eyes training on the possible gap, the sun on the down of a young girl's arm. As likely as not, she's wearing flip-flops. And this is why they're vicious. Their cruelty is more a distraction than a temperament. They thrust in their seats. They want to be still, but they don't know how. Like a thing taken from water, they thrash about, needing to learn to breathe. They twitch. They ask, where do they come from? I'm not sure what they are really asking. I hear they're the spit of God. Is likely a man to fuck a fish, another says. Do they lay eggs? My hair is in place, my tongue is in check. They're not people, but they've got hair. Yes, the hair makes it difficult. If you put them in a jar, another volunteers, it amplifies their voices and you can hear them sing. Don't do that, I say. But what I end up saying is too softly for them to hear. Already they do. I know they will try one for a dare. It's salty. The skin is cold, but the blood is so warm. They'll say that because that's what you're supposed to say, there being nothing else to say. And the older boys right now are standing over a mason jar half full of scummy lake water, smoking cigarettes, listening to the filthy things it will say. They feed them tadpoles, which is like feeding rats to lions. But the boys are confused by size. Only as big as my thumb, one of them observes. Part 3. Perhaps it's because they've seen me after lights out go onto the lake and float in the brown water, enjoying the sharp little teeth, the billowing bubbling of them under me, the water around me turning purple with the blood, the mud. Or maybe it's they've seen how I salt my food. Once you have a taste for it. Or they've heard rumors at least. There are plenty of rumors. The other counselors have no choice but to share breakfast with me. The younger boys look with disgust and awe at my wilted skin. But for the ice, I stay here all year round. Someone tried to explain it to me when I was a boy coming up here. They fill you with water, he said, but that isn't what he wanted to say. I have this dream where I drag rocks to the pier, really big rocks, and I step into the water. I wear goggles, and I take those heavy stones in my hand and I let it drag me down. I grip it as tightly as I can, but inevitably, my body looks for air, and some constant pull pulls me up to another breath and another stone. There are always on me these two pulls, the one that keeps pushing me and the one that keeps pulling me. And this other, it's lifting, pressing me to the surface, and they just make room and watch me, enjoying the slow drowning, like an angler enjoys a taut line. Thank you.